The entire Browns season has boiled down to one uncomfortable truth the organization keeps trying to avoid. If Kevin Stefanski can't recognize, trust, and develop the quarterback this franchise just spent its future on, then maybe he shouldn't be the one leading it anymore. Because no matter how many polished press conferences he holds, no matter how many excuses are thrown out about timelines, learning curves, or protecting the rookie, the reality is staring everyone in the face. The Browns invested everything into Shedeur Sanders. Not just draft capital, not just marketing hype, but the very direction of the franchise. And somehow, despite all that, the kid hasn't been allowed to take real ownership of the team he was brought in to transform. This isn't a normal quarterback situation. This isn't a veteran placeholder keeping the seat warm until the rookie is ready. This is the #1 pick in the entire draft. A player the front office believed in so much they willingly tied every major future decision to him. The fans bought in immediately, the league took notice, and even the locker room expected a new era to begin the moment he walked through the doors. But that era never officially started, not because of ability, not because of lack of preparation, but because one man insisted on sticking to a plan nobody else believes in. And that's where the tension becomes impossible to ignore. Stefanski isn't just delaying a rookie debut. He's holding back the player whose success determines the fate of the franchise. Every week that passes with Shedeur on the bench, the conversation gets louder, the frustration grows thicker, and the excuses sound weaker. The idea that Gabriel somehow gives the Browns a better chance to execute the system has stopped convincing even Stefanski's most loyal defenders. Because everyone can see what's really happening. The Browns built a future around one quarterback, while their head coach is still trying to win with another. That disconnect, that stubborn refusal to adapt, is the crack that threatens to split the entire organization in half. On one side, you have a front office and fan base ready for the Shedeur era. On the other, you have a coach who seems more interested in proving his method than embracing the franchise's direction. It's not just a difference in philosophy, it's a power struggle playing out in real time. And each week it becomes clearer that the longer Shedeur sits, the more damage is being done to the relationship between the coach, his players, and the people who put their faith in this new chapter. The Browns didn't draft Shedeur to be an optional part of the plan. They drafted him to be the plan. And if the coach can't see that, or refuses to accept it, then the biggest problem in Cleveland isn't the rookie's readiness. It's the head coach's resistance. If you're enjoying this video and loving the content, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up. It really helps us know what you want to see more of. And why keep all the excitement to yourself? Share this video with your friends, family, or anyone who loves NFL drama. What makes this situation explosive isn't just the quarterback debate, it's the stakes attached to it. Because the Browns aren't dealing with a typical rookie, a mid-round project, or a player who needs years of polishing. They're dealing with the centerpiece of their future, a quarterback whose success or failure will define not just a season, but an era. And when the franchise goes all in on a player like that, every decision surrounding him becomes amplified. Every snap he doesn't take. Every mistake made by the starter in front of him. Every post-game press conference where Stefanski dodges another question about when the time will be right. On the surface, it looks like cautious coaching. But once you dig deeper, you start to see the real danger. The Browns have attached the fate of their franchise to Shedeur Sanders, and right now, they're protecting the wrong thing. Instead of protecting the future by giving Shedeur the reps he needs, they're protecting a system, a routine, and maybe even a coach's pride. And when that happens, the consequences ripple far beyond a simple depth chart decision. Because here's the harsh truth. Shedeur's success isn't optional. It's mandatory. It's the lifeline that determines whether Cleveland stays competitive in an AFC loaded with explosive quarterback talent. If Shedeur becomes the star they drafted him to be, the Browns suddenly have a real shot at stability, excitement, and long-term relevance. But if he does, if he stagnates on the bench, if the development timeline falls apart because he never got the early reps every elite quarterback needs, then the Browns aren't just risking a disappointing season, they're risking a collapse that could set them back years. That's why every decision feels bigger than football, because everyone sees what's coming. Eventually, Shedeur is going to take over. The only question is whether he'll be taking over early enough to sharpen his instincts and grow with the team, or whether he'll step in too late, carrying the weight of a fractured season and a frustrated fanbase. And each week that passes without clarity adds to the danger, because quarterbacks don't grow on silence, uncertainty, and sideline observation. They grow through fire, mistakes, and real experience. The stakes get even higher when you consider the emotional part of this story, the trust between a franchise quarterback and the organization that drafted him. When a front office makes you the #1 pick, they're not just choosing your talent, they're promising you a future, a vision, a role. And for a player as competitive as Shedeur, that promise matters. If he starts questioning whether that promise still exists, or whether he was drafted into a situation where politics outweigh performance, cracks can form that no coach wants to admit are possible. That's where the Browns sit right now, in a fragile moment where the future of the quarterback and the future of the franchise are tied together so tightly that one wrong move pulls both down. And unless the organization aligns behind the direction it already committed to, the stakes will only grow heavier, and the consequences far more severe. For all the frustration building around this team, there's one thing the Browns should be grateful for: the situation isn't lost yet. It's messy, it's tense, and it's dangerously close to spiraling, but it's not beyond repair. And that's the part nobody in Cleveland seems willing to admit out loud. Beneath all the noise, all the second-guessing, and all the finger-pointing, there's still a clear path forward. A simple one. A path that doesn't require a complete rebuild, a coaching overhaul, or some miracle turnaround. It just requires the Browns to make the decision they've been avoiding since week 1. Hand the offense to the quarterback they drafted to lead it. That's the irony buried in this whole ordeal. The fix isn't complicated. The Browns don't need to reinvent their identity. They already chose their identity the moment they took Shedeur Sanders with the first pick. They just haven't committed to it. And the longer they hesitate, the harder they make it on themselves. But if they were to act now, before the season slips entirely out of their grasp, everything that feels chaotic right now could actually fall back into place faster than anyone expects. It starts with something as simple as momentum. Teams don't rally around confusion, they rally around clarity. And nothing brings clarity faster than a decisive move that signals to every player in the locker room exactly where the team is headed. Name Shedeur the starter, and suddenly the entire tone of the season changes. It doesn't erase the early mistakes, but it reframes them. It tells the locker room, the fans, and the league that the Browns aren't clinging to comfort. They're charging into the future they've already invested in. And that kind of shift can be powerful. It can reset the energy in the building. It can reopen the belief that this season isn't a lost cause but a delayed beginning. It can calm the tension between a coaching staff trying to protect their system and a fan base demanding results. It can turn a fractured storyline into a fresh chapter, all from one decision. Even for Stefanski, this moment is salvageable. Every coach makes missteps. Every coach has blind spots. But the ones who survive and earn respect doing it are the ones who adjust before it's too late. If you were to step forward and acknowledge that the team's best chance is in developing the quarterback they chose as their future, it wouldn't be seen as weakness. It would be seen as leadership. The kind fans remember and players respond to. And for Shedeur, this moment is still salvageable as well. Yes, the delay has created unnecessary pressure. Yes, the mixed signals have raised questions, but none of that matters once he's on the field. Because once he takes that first snap as the official starter, the entire narrative flips. Suddenly, he's not the rookie being held back, he's the franchise stepping into his role. The story becomes opportunity, not frustration. That's why the Browns still have time. Because as complicated as this situation seems, it all comes down to one straightforward choice. One quarterback, one direction. One decision that can pull this team back from a cliff that only looks impossible from a distance. The Browns don't need a miracle. They just need to stop delaying the inevitable and start the era they drafted their future around. The moment Shedeur Sanders becomes the starting quarterback, everything inside the Browns organization changes instantly. Not gradually, not quietly, and definitely not subtly. It would be one of those rare moves in sports where you can feel the shift the second it happens, like someone flipping the lights back on in a room everyone thought was getting darker by the day. Because starting, Shedeur doesn't just adjust the depth chart. It rewrites the season's entire storyline. First, it resets the energy in the locker room. Players aren't blind, they see the talent, they see the potential, and they see the direction the franchise already chose months ago. When the most gifted quarterback on the roster is finally given the reins, it sends a message that the organization is ready to fight forward instead of staying stuck. Veterans start believing the season still matters. Young players feel like they're part of something building instead of something stalling. That spark is priceless, especially when the team has been drifting through confusion and mixed signals. Then there's the fan base, the heartbeat of everything Cleveland football represents. Right now, they're restless. They're watching other rookie quarterbacks make mistakes, grow, and improve while their own number one pick stands on the sideline holding a helmet. Starting Shedeur lights the city on fire in the best way possible. Ticket demand shoots up. Social media explodes. The fan frustration that's been simmering for weeks is replaced by excitement and anticipation. Suddenly, every Sunday becomes a must-watch event again, not because the Browns are perfect, but because they're finally building toward the future everyone was promised. On a larger scale, the media narrative flips immediately. Instead of questioning Stefanski's stubbornness or the team's long-term vision, the conversation shifts to Shedeur's development, his chemistry with the offense, and the new identity the Browns are forming. The franchise stops looking hesitant and starts looking proactive. And in a league where perception can dictate momentum, that kind of shift is invaluable. But the biggest impact, the one that matters most, is what starting Shedeur does for Shedeur himself. Because quarterbacks don't grow by watching. They grow by doing, by throwing, by making mistakes, learning from them, and coming back sharper the next week. The reps he takes now build the foundation for everything the Browns hope he'll become. Every series becomes experience logged. Every defensive look becomes something he can store for the future. The earlier he starts, the faster the rise. Starting him also strengthens the trust between Shedeur and the organization. Being chosen with the number one pick means being handed responsibility, not protected from it. When the Browns finally show their full belief in him, it reinforces the bond that every franchise quarterback relationship needs. It tells him, "This is your team now." And players thrive when they know they're backed, not benched.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button.
Finally, the impact hits Stefanski too, because making the switch shows adaptability. It proves he's coaching to win, not coaching to validate a preseason plan. It turns criticism into credit and tension into alignment. It could be the move that saves his season and maybe even his job. In one move, the Browns don't just start a quarterback. They start the future they've been pretending to wait for. At the center of this entire controversy sits one crucial question. What does Kevin Stefanski believe coaching is supposed to be? Because every decision he's made this season points to a philosophy that no longer matches the situation unfolding around him. Stefanski has always been a system-first coach, someone who values structure, repetition, and a controlled environment over raw talent or improvisation. In most situations, that kind of discipline can hold a team together. But when you have a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, sticking rigidly to a system can do the opposite. It can suffocate the one player the organization needs to grow the most. Stefanski seems convinced that development must follow a strict timeline, one measured by classroom sessions, film analysis, and quiet observation. But real quarterbacks aren't built in silence. They're built in chaos. They're shaped by the live-fire moments you can't replicate in meetings or walkthroughs. The belief that a rookie can learn the system from the sideline is a theory that's been disproven countless times, yet Stefanski continues to cling to it like it's football law. And that's where his philosophy begins to collide with the reality in front of him. Because this isn't about Dylan Gabriel anymore. Gabriel is simply a placeholder, a name caught in the middle of a broader argument. The real issue is that Stefanski is coaching as if he needs to protect his scheme, when the truth is the scheme should be evolving to fit the quarterback the franchise invested everything into. Great coaches don't force players to conform to a rigid framework. They adapt the framework to elevate their players. Stefanski, at least so far, has been unwilling to bend. And that unwillingness has created a fracture between philosophy and necessity. The Browns don't need a coach who treats the quarterback position like a delicate experiment. They need a coach willing to embrace the unpredictability and upside that comes with a young, dynamic QB. They need someone who sees growth not as a risk, but as an investment. The more Stefanski tries to shelter his system, the more he prevents the future from taking shape. And in the NFL, the future doesn't wait for anyone, not even a head coach. What makes this even more complicated is the emotional layer. Players notice when a coach refuses to adjust. They start wondering whether decisions are being made for the betterment of the team or for the preservation of a philosophy. A locker room filled with veterans and rising stars wants clarity, not caution. They want a coach who believes in the talent around him, not one who micromanages the timeline until the season slips through his hands. If Stefanski wants to truly lead this team, he has to break away from the comfort of his system-first mindset. Coaching isn't about proving you were right in July. It's about making the right decisions in November. It's about recognizing when the moment demands boldness instead of patience. And right now, Cleveland needs a coach willing to embrace the quarterback they drafted, not the process he prefers. Because sticking to an inflexible philosophy might protect Stefanski's comfort. But it won't protect the Browns' future. Every NFL team reaches a point where the decisions they make stop affecting just the next game and start shaping the next decade. That's exactly where the Browns are standing right now, on the edge of a moment that could either launch a new era or trigger the kind of setback that organizations spend years trying to recover from. And the wild part is that this future hinges on a single player, a single relationship, and a single choice: how they handle Shedeur Sanders. When a franchise drafts a quarterback #1 overall, they're not just selecting talent. They're selecting identity. They're telling the world, this is the player we'll build everything around. That means the offense, the culture, the marketing, the long-term roster decisions, all of it circles back to that one guy. And if that one guy doesn't grow into the role because of hesitation, mismanagement, or mixed messaging, the consequences don't just hit the player. They hit the entire organization. That's the danger Cleveland is flirting with. Not because Shedeur lacks ability. Reports, analysts, and teammates have all pointed to his upside. But because the developmental timeline is being influenced by decisions that don't align with the franchise's investment. There's only so long a team can keep its future on pause before the future starts questioning the present. When a young quarterback is told he's the centerpiece but treated like a spare part, the trust that's supposed to bind him to the organization can start to crack. And that's where this situation becomes bigger than football. Quarterbacks today carry more influence than ever. Their brands, their leaders, their long-term commitments. When they sense instability or inconsistency, it doesn't just affect their performance, it affects their faith in the organization. No rookie expects perfection, but every rookie expects clarity. And if Shedeur spends an entire season watching from the sideline while the team struggles, he's not just losing reps. He's losing belief that the team truly sees him as the future. The scary part for the Browns is that these moments snowball fast. If trust fades, frustration builds. If frustration builds, relationships strain. And once that begins, repairing it becomes 10 times harder than simply making the right decision in the first place. The last thing Cleveland needs is to wake up months from now staring at headlines filled with speculation about Shedeur's happiness or long-term commitment. Even whispers of that kind of storyline can derail stability the team has spent years trying to construct. But the risk goes beyond Shedeur. If the Browns mishandle their franchise quarterback, it signals to the rest of the league, players, coaches, and future free agents that the organization can't align behind its own vision. Teams that waste elite talent don't attract more of it. And once that reputation sticks, it becomes a shadow that follows a franchise for years. That's why this moment is so critical. The Browns aren't just deciding who starts on Sunday. They're deciding what their next 5 to 10 years look like. They're deciding whether their franchise quarterback feels valued or sidelined, empowered or delayed. They're choosing between a future built around potential or a future built around regret. Because if mishandled, this isn't just a setback. It's a turning point. And turning the wrong direction now could define the Browns far longer than anyone in the building wants to imagine. Cleveland now finds itself standing in front of a moment that feels bigger than a simple coaching decision, bigger than a quarterback battle, and bigger than the usual week-to-week noise that surrounds an NFL season. This is one of those rare crossroads where the identity of an entire franchise hangs in the balance. And the most surreal part, the solution is sitting right there, fully within reach, waiting for the organization to stop hesitating and start acting. Because once all the press conferences fade, once all the excuses lose their shine, and once the dust settles on the arguments happening across talk shows, podcasts, and social media, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The Browns already know what they need to do. Everyone does. Fans know it. Analysts know it. Even players in their own quiet way know it. The tension surrounding this team isn't coming from confusion. It's coming from the refusal to embrace what's obvious. Starting Shedeur Sanders isn't just a personnel move. It's a statement about direction. It's a declaration that the Browns are ready to stop stalling and start evolving. And until the organization makes that declaration, every step forward will feel like it's being taken on shaky ground. Every game will feel heavier than it needs to be. Every week will feel like a rerun of the same unanswered question. And that's where this story sharpens into its most dramatic point, because the longer the franchise waits, the more the stakes rise. The Browns aren't just risking a slow start or a disappointing season. They're risking the relationship that ties them to the quarterback they hope will lead them for the next decade. They're risking the momentum that could turn Cleveland from a team with potential into a team with purpose. And most of all, they're risking the trust of a fan base that has spent years waiting for a true face of the future to step onto the field. But here's the twist. This moment is still theirs to seize. Nothing irreversible has happened yet. No bridges have burned. No point of no return has been crossed. The Browns still have full control over which version of their future becomes reality. One path leads to confusion, second-guessing, and a season defined by what-ifs. The other leads to clarity, growth, and the beginning of a new chapter that has been delayed but never denied. And this is exactly why the closing question of this entire saga matters so much. Because the decision isn't just about Shedeur. It's about whether the Browns want to be a franchise that adapts, evolves, and rises, or a franchise that hesitates until the opportunity is gone. The season hasn't been written yet. The story hasn't reached its final page. Everything is still open. The roster, the leadership, the energy, the possibilities. All it takes is one announcement, one shift in philosophy, one moment of courage that signals to everyone watching that Cleveland is done hiding from its own potential. So now the spotlight turns back to Kevin Stefanski, the front office, and the entire organization. Will they finally step into the future they invested in? Or will they let fear and hesitation write the final chapter instead? Because the next decision the Browns make won't just change Sunday. It could change everything.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.